One of the problems with having a secret war is the issue of accountability. I asked Jeremy about the level of oversight the US Congress has over the Joint Special Operations Command.
There's a funny thing going on in the United States. JSOC on paper is actually required, mandated to report its activities to the Senate Armed Services Committee. What happens, though, is that they'll go into secret session, which is where all of this stuff happens, with a sort of elite clique of senators who are given permission to oversee these operations. And these senators never ask questions that they don't want the answers to. So it's not that there isn't oversight. On paper, they can point to all sorts of committees they're reporting to and documents they have to file. But if the people responsible for oversight don't ask the right questions, you're never going to get the answers that reveal the information that would be objectionable. So a lot of it is that, I talked to one operator, a guy who worked on these missions, and he said, Congress doesn't want to go behind the curtain. They don't want to see what goes on in the dark, so they're never going to ask the questions. Because there would be then a moral burden on these people to say, whoa, we don't want you doing this. But it's like this scene in the movie A Few Good Men where Jack Nicholson is running the U.S. military camp right on the border with Cuba, and he's facing down against the Cuban soldiers, and he's saying, I eat my Cheerios every morning several hundred feet from people who want to kill me, and you don't want to know what goes on and what we need to do to keep you safe. There's a certain macho mentality about all of this where these are the guys that keep America safe in the middle of the night, and if you ask too many questions, you will threaten their ability to do their job. So it's a sort of warrior culture worship in the United States, and it certainly exists on Capitol Hill. What it means at the end of the day is that there's a rubber stamping that goes on where you can say, oh, this is all accountable, and these guys can do actions. No one's going to investigate it. No one's going to hold them to account. When things go wrong, it's handled within the units. These aren't guys that are going to be put on trial for anything that they do. So it's essentially carte blanche. You can wage these wars without fear that much of it's going to come to public light. When Osama bin Laden was killed, at the raid on the Abbottabad compound, senior military officials said that wasn't even the most dangerous operation we'd done that week. There were thousands of raids like that, and we heard nothing about them. They turned this into a made-for-TV movie for Hollywood because they got the result that they wanted. They killed Osama bin Laden. What if a bunch of Navy SEALs had been killed in that operation? What if multiple helicopters had crashed and Pakistani forces responded and there was a gun battle and multiple members of the Pakistani military were killed and it turned into this epic disaster? You think that there would be, Disney would be trying to copyright SEAL Team 6 and that Zero Dark 30, which was just sort of this glorification of the whole thing and turned it into a superhero action movie. I mean, all they needed was Matt Damon to star in that role, and it's like Bourne Identity 5 or whatever number we're up to with that. It became a story because it went the way the U.S. wanted it to go, and it had that sort of, warrior culture worship that's become such a deep part of American film.
What about the president and his association with JSOC? Because we have that photograph of during the Osama bin Laden raid, where Barack Obama is sitting in what looks like the Situation Room and is looking very intently at the raid as it's happening live. What does that say about the close association that he has with JSOC?
Well, I mean, on one level, it's perfectly understandable. JSOC was running the operation, so the guy at the head of that table is this guy named General Brad Webb, and Webb is the deputy of Admiral William McRaven, who is the head of all U.S. Special Operations Forces and was the guy that was leading the mission. But there's a funny story behind that photo. I'm sure people remember it's an iconic photo. It's got all of Hillary Clinton is in the room, and Robert Gates is there, and Joe Biden. And the President of the United States is sitting off to the side on a folding chair. And the man at the head of the table is this guy from JSOC. Well, the story behind that, and I describe this in my book, is that the president had gone out to play golf that day, it was a regularly scheduled golf match. And the reason he did it is to try to give the impression that business is as normal. So in golf, there's 18 rounds. He only played 9 that day. He comes back to the White House in his golf outfit still, and his advisors tried to tell Obama that they didn't want him in the exact room, so they wanted him to be in this adjacent part of the Situation Room in the White House. And the president said, no, I insist on coming in. So he goes into an already crowded room. Everyone gets up, including General Webb. And the president tells everyone to sit down and instead pulls a folding chair up next to him. For me, it's on a tactical level, it makes sense that happened, but there's a symbolism, which is what I think you're getting at, which is who's really in control of these operations. Remember when Obama came into office, he had no foreign policy experience except for a short stint in the U.S. Senate. He was not a military guy. He comes into office after 8 years of the Bush era. He's meeting with generals and admirals who have been very empowered under Bush to do covert operations. And these guys say to him, there are all these threats around the world. There are people plotting to blow up U.S. airplanes and poison the water supplies and attack U.S. embassies and murder U.S. civilians who are tourists abroad. And if you don't give us the authority to go after these people in an offensive way, to go into countries even when the home government doesn't want us there, you're going to be putting America at risk. So this president, who people were questioning his citizenship, saying he's a Muslim, also, which was part of it's really kind of a disgraceful aspect of American society, where the idea that being a Muslim itself is like a line of attack, as though there would be something wrong with the president being a Muslim. But they put this line forward about him where he's a Kenyan Muslim, anti-colonialist, socialist, non-American. If a terror attack were to happen on U.S. soil under his watch, he would have been eaten alive by his political opponents. So I think Obama became very quickly seduced with the idea of covert action and the idea that JSOC was the smartest, cleanest way of waging war.
The first time we spoke was when Blackwater was published.
Right, I remember.
And George W. Bush was then president. How have things changed under Obama?
What is clear is that the Republicans owe Barack Obama a great debt of gratitude for continuing some of the worst policies of the Bush-Cheney era and cleaning them up and selling them to a lot of particularly liberals in the United States as a good thing. There were polls that in recent years that have indicated that 70% of self-identified liberal Democrats support drone strikes, and that when the target in question is an American citizen, the support only drops slightly. I don't believe for a moment that if John McCain had won the election in 2008, that you would see liberals enthusiastically cheerleading the assassination of U.S. citizens without trial, or the backing of unsavory mercenary forces in a variety of countries around the world, or would have accepted the fact that Guantanamo remained open 5 years into the administration of a Democratic president who campaigned on a pledge to close it. So, you asked, is it better or worse? I think that it would have been very difficult for the Republicans to do much of what Obama did on a counterterrorism level. And Obama is a very hawkish president. And a lot of liberals now say, oh, well, he betrayed us and he turned his back on us. No, he pretty much telegraphed what he was going to do. He said he was going to escalate the war in Afghanistan. He said he was going to, quote, take the fight to al-Qaeda and other militant organizations. And he really has expanded the battlefield. So at the end of the day, when it comes to counterterrorism policy, national security policy, one of Obama's enduring legacies, if not the sort of primary enduring legacy, is going to be that he centralized assassination as a major component of what's called U.S. national security policy, and ensured that the very tactics many around the world found unconscionable under Bush will continue under Democratic and Republican administrations. So you tell me, is that better or worse? Bush, easy to hate Bush. Dick Cheney, cartoonish villain, sitting in his lair plotting the destruction of the world for the benefit of Halliburton stocks. It's easy to sort of go after those guys. What takes principle is looking at someone like Obama who's doing this and saying, wow, this is really wrong. When you have a constitutional law professor, Nobel Peace Prize winning, popular Democratic president doing things that you would have objected to under Cheney, but now you're cheerleading them, who does that say something about? It says something about the people who are cheerleading it. That's not principle if you only oppose it when certain political figures do it. That's partisanship. So, I mean, that's part of why I wrote this book, is because, I think it's really kind of disingenuous, particularly of a lot of liberals in the United States, to act as though these policies are smart when a Democrat does them simply because it's a Democrat. I mean, it's sort of wild to me that that's the state of discussion in the U.S. right now, but it is.